This podcast is presented by Castrol Edge Euro, the #1 brand recommended by technicians in Europe. Did you know that almost 50% of European vehicles in Canada come factory filled with Edge Euro? Offer better oil. Offer your customer Castrol Edge Euro. Questions? Contact your local auto parts distributor, or Wakefield Territory Sales Manager, or customer service at 1-800-268-5339. Let's try this. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. It's your host, Andrew Ross. Now, the issue of vehicle theft and the role that access to scan tools by criminals is not exactly new, but earlier this year, it did kind of hit the headlines out of, gaining a lot of attention south of the border in Washington, D.C. Big press conferences, naming scan tools by brand that car theft rings had glommed onto to use to conduct their illicit trade, which really just for us in the automotive service sector really served to highlight something that we've been aware of and that has been a topic of conversation and action for some time, but really kind of put paid to any thought that we were through anything or that we had already accomplished all that needed to be accomplished. So with me to talk about that and what you can do as a shop and what the scan tool suppliers are doing to help alleviate the issues around car theft is Donnie Safer. Now Donnie Safer is with NASTF, the National Automotive Service Task Force. He's been on the podcast before. We're really happy to have him back again. Donnie, welcome again to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah. So maybe for folks who haven't been necessarily following along or thought that it was something that was happening in a foreign country, it wasn't happening in Canada. Talk a little bit about, what's the landscape and where does NASTA fit into what's going on with vehicle security and service?
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And I think that the point of view you have to have is that this is an international problem. And the main reason that the US and Canada are such a major player in it is the sheer volume of vehicles that we produce and the size of our car park. It just makes it so it's a lot bigger place to draw from, if you will. And many of the vehicles that are produced here are very popular to be moved elsewhere because they're not produced there. And so bad guys can get big money for them. And a lot of them, if you look at the list, a lot of them are utility vehicles of some sort. They're capable of doing something off-road, which oftentimes in places where they go, that's a plus, right? They're not necessarily big highway kind of countries and that sort of thing. So I think that's the main thing. And NASTA's point of view on this is that we're an industry organization. Our board is made up of the entire vertical, and we wanted to be the leader because we already had the secure data release model. We wanted to be the leader in helping do what we do with service information, and that's fill gaps in the security pieces. Where's there a hole where there's a lack of communication between key players who need it, and where can we help with what we've already got for technology? And so that's sort of how the whole evolution of going from just doing key codes and immobilizer information and validating tools to working with the aftermarket scan tool companies to make them have the ability to do the same thing that in essence automakers do. And so one of the biggest places where these cars they migrate is back and forth across both of our borders.
Right.
So bad things happen on your side, bad things happen on our side. But when you move to the other side, there's really not anybody that's able to watch. And there are some connection issues where it's slow for law enforcement to talk to each other. There's some great organizations out there that we work with, but still kind of struggling to get them connected well enough they can do something quickly and say, oh, that car is in play. I can help. So that's really the main focus of what we've been trying to do with it. And I'll let you redirect from there.
Right. Yeah, sure. So, I mentioned, the secure data release model and That's certainly one, component of it. Uh, and the kind of growing adoption of in the diagnostic tool sector of verifications and validations that kind of have come along. And I'm kind of skipping along here a little bit, uh, but some time ago now, it became clear that thieves really had figured out how to use these tools that every shop has, and even if you kind of put them in a lockbox in your shop, if somebody is willing enough to break in and steal it, they can still use that tool. So the search was on for a better way to kind of lock those down and
Yeah.
really restrict the use to those who should be using them, professionals and those working in the service industry. So how does that work? And talk just a little bit about that, because like what is it, and who's playing ball so far on that front, and what does it mean for shops and the technicians that use these tools?
Sure. Well, look, first, let's talk about what's in it for the shops because that's what they want to know, right? What do I have to do? There's that old axiom that the good guys always have to do something extra because of the bad guys, and it's just the universal fact. We've got licensing, you've got licensing because there are people who aren't good at what they do.
Yeah,
And so somebody has to verify that. Now, whether or not we like who's doing the verification, that's always the question. But at the end of the day, when there is that type of body out there, the skill set rises, the pay rises. And I mean, just look at the struggle that technicians have had in getting paid well, and look at electricians
right.
and look at hairstylists, right? They're both
Not
licensed.
to knock hairstylists, okay?
No, not at all. Not at all.
But
But what I'm saying is that if you look at that, you've got some hairstylists that make far better money than technicians do. Of course,
yeah.
they got feet problems and knee problems, and it's
Oh,
just kind of
sure.
like what
Yeah.
we do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think that the main thing here is that we needed a way to say as an industry, and NASDAQ didn't invent this idea. This came to that they came to us and said, well, you can do this. Can you do it this way? And so we needed a way to say to differentiate between the bad guy using the tool and the good guy using the tool. And the scope is what a lot of shops don't understand. A aftermarket tool will be used in well over 80% of car thefts, either at the beginning or at the end. It's almost a necessity because the OE tools have got straight up transparency on them. You are logged in and they know who you are. So, in essence, what we wanted to do was offer that same thing to the aftermarket tools, but create a little bit of flexibility for the situations that locksmiths often incurred, where they're in a difficult place, and I can't fill out paperwork while I'm hanging upside down, and all that kind of song and dance. So what we tried to do was come up with, well, we've got this technology, we've had it since 2007. We know a lot more about how our guys do the job when they're doing it right. So let's try to facilitate making it easier for them, harder for the bad guys, and the transparency thing of just basically plunking in 15 digits and having the scan tool and SDRM together create a record that says, hey, Andrew was working on this car.
Right.
And if Andrew wasn't working on this car, he definitely facilitated working on this car.
Right. Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
I
then,
mean,
if
that's kind of the other side, and I know I mentioned earlier just about vehicle theft, and before we came on to talk a little bit, because
Mhm.
I forget exactly the number. You will know it. The percentage of vehicle thefts that have been facilitated through the car dealer network, as far as opposed to the independent network, it's the vast majority, right? And so there's a loss of control in the dealer networks. I guess what it tells me, that you certainly in the aftermarket, we want to not have that situation, right?
Yeah, and so that has also evolved quite a bit because we were having serious problems with dealers giving out information that facilitated a car theft. And that was, of course, mostly key codes
Yep.
because that, it's not like they can, remotely immobilize a car, nor would they because there's no money in it for them. And that that required automakers to lock down their processes significantly inside the dealership. And there were dealerships that had almost every technician had access to that security information and the whole parts department. And the question became, but do we really all need it? Do we really all use it? Or would it be better to say, hey, we got somebody on every shift? So policy change there. And I think that same kind of approach, that's what we've been suggesting to shops since SDRM started. Well, at least I have. I'm not sure about before me, but the idea is you don't do this type of operation that often. And so let's make sure we've got somebody technically capable who's available to the shop to finish that, whether that's in-house or somebody that you call in. And you have to decide what fits you. I don't want everybody on planet Earth to be a VSP.
Right.
The beauty of this program is we're a not-for-profit. We only need to have enough money to run the thing. We're not out to try to pay shareholders or anything like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're not
So
having to flog a bunch of licenses and certifications just to keep the lights on. Right.
exactly. So therefore, get the right person in the shop. And so over time, what we've done to make that even more, I guess, friendly to the shop owner is we tell the shop owner, please don't be a VSP because you wind up being a security leak. Somebody walks up and says, "Oh, I need this for this car," and I mean, you're busy. You give them the information, you help them log in, and that you've broken our policies. I mean,
Right.
immediately you've broken our policies. So get a tech out there that does it, and then you can be a company admin. It's free. We set it up so you can manage your staff and all that kind of thing.
Right. I guess
So
this is something just to kind of emphasize is that the vehicle security professional is an individual
yeah,
authorization certification, not for a shop. It is the individual is the person who is authorized to have this kind of access and not to pass along that information. It's like you don't pass along your PIN number for your ATMs either, right? Like just don't do stuff like that, right?
yeah. Yeah, it's intended to be similar to the security programs that governments have for military folks and
Oh, right.
people
Okay.
who have, access to secure information. That's why it's called a secure data release model. I mean,
Right.
it was emulating those types of programs. And so we say, okay, Mr. Technician, you are now a trusted individual to do that. So to your point, we credential the individual and not the business, though we do allow the business to have a structure within SDRM to say, okay, well, I've got these two guys who are primary VSPs that might be in a locksmith shop. And I've got a couple of subordinates that work with them, and those guys are managed by those guys. And then I've got a company administrative account that I manage everybody. I'm not doing security information, but I can say you are shut off because you no longer work here. I've got
Right.
control. And
Right.
that's
So
our
yeah.
that's our goal. Give
Yeah.
the owner control.
Yeah. 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 How's that being received by the industry overall?
Which part?
Well, the structure of it, I guess.
Oh, the structure that it's been very well received. In fact, we had when we started this program with the company admins, I lose track. It's probably been 3 or 4 years since we did it. We now have like over 300 company admins
Right.
that and what we really built it for was the mom and pop shops because they were like the security leaks. It was just it was just difficult because of the way they did business. So we set it up so that if one of them is home dispatching, in essence, talking to customers and saying, "Yeah, we'll get out and get your car fixed." Let me send my husband or wife because our
Right.
team seemed to work both ways,
Yeah.
and they'll get over there and get that taken care of. Well, then when they get out in the field, they would find out there was a problem. Well, we don't really have documentation, well, this, well, that. And so this way, somebody on the front end can get all that information, plug it into into SDRM and do their thing. So, and I'm speaking right now specifically of the OE type of transaction
Yeah.
where you're getting a key code or you're logging in a scan tool, and there's a requirement to fill out what our techs call a D1 form or
Yeah.
customer
Yeah. Yeah.
authorization.
Of course. Yeah.
And so that makes it so that company admin can do that for the individual that's going to do the work in the field. So they just show up, verify documents, take a couple of pictures, and do their job.
Right. Right. I mean, it sounds like I know that I'm scanning some of the forums and whatnot, and there has been sometimes a concern raised, just oh gosh, more administrivia and more stuff to plug in and more, things that are just going to kind of get in the way of me doing my job sort of attitude. It doesn't actually sound like it's that onerous.
It, it we've it was not that hard to begin with. It was really hard when we had a manual paper form because you had to sit there and write it and find a surface to do it on, which oftentimes was the hood of a car that was at 150 degrees. But now we keep evolving it to make it easier. In fact, we've got a new app that's releasing today for our members, and within it, right now you can scan the VIN right off the car. So the VIN to me is the hardest part because it's 17 digits, and if you screw it up, you're going to get the wrong information, or you're going to wind up with a record mismatch in SDRM, which you can fix, but you have to fix it, right? We just want it to be right to begin with. And so you can scan the VIN, put it right into your customer authorization form, and we're facilitating all of those things within the app. Now, right now, we don't have the D1s in there, but we will in the next release. And so you'll literally be able to do the whole transaction at the car with a phone, and the majority of the information you will be able to just go click, 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 and it's there.
Right. Right. And then if you're a vehicle security professional, you're kind of all set, right?
And in most places where there's a locksmith license, like you've got in Quebec, um, it's required by law that you do all of this anyway. All we're doing is facilitating compliance.
Right. 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 The other thing that gets mentioned sometimes is, oh, it's just another, cash grab.
Yeah, and that's I guess that's convenient, but our 990, our tax return, it's out there. We basically run 10 to 15% net margin because we have to have savings to pay for things that, pop up that we weren't expecting. We spend all of our money on members. All of it.
Right.
That's my initiative. The board's like spend all the money on the members, do good stuff for them.
Right.
And that's what we do. So if you want to call it that, okay, but $18 a month is what it costs to be a VSP. And there, if you can't make that back in a single transaction, call me and I'll show you how.
I think that would put it firmly at the lowest cost monthly expense of any shop anywhere or any technician, anybody who's doing any of this work anyway, even never mind VSP work, but just anything that requires a service information subscription.
Right.
Um, it's you might spend less on pencils in a month, but that'll probably be about it. Everything else will
That's
be
just because nobody uses pencils
nobody's
anymore.
using pencils anymore. But yeah, so again, people raise these things, and I feel like sometimes it's just a little bit of a lack of knowledge or familiarity with how straightforward it can be, and it's like anything. Once you've done it a couple of times, it's like, oh, this is easy. I know how to do
Yeah.
this, and
Well, I think some of this, Andrew, stems from the fact that the majority of what we do, we are very, very open about.
right,
But in the security piece, there are areas we have to have a fence around it. And, it's like, well, what are they doing? Well, if I told you, then the bad guys would know too, because you guys can't right?
yeah,
They're on the forums. Oh, did you know NASDAQ's doing this?
right, right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Trade secret, boys.
Yeah, yeah. I have a sort of a non-automotive example of the sounds like the same feeling I get. I used to follow a lot of forums on vendor Telecasters. I'm a Telecaster lover, and I love it. And people would be like, "Hey, I've got this Chinese knockoff. How close is it to a proper, a Fender Telecaster? And can you please tell me what I'm missing or what I've got wrong?" and there'd be people get on the forum and be like, oh well, the the sticker is 1 millimeter too low to the left, and the thing is this, and like chapter and verse detailing the shortcomings of this knockoff. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Somebody is out there like monitoring all this stuff, trying to figure out how exactly to make like as exact a copy as they can uh, from a visual standpoint.
Yeah.
Um, and this is kind of that way. It's like like we don't what's the first rule about VSPs is we don't talk about VSP, right? Like don't talk about all the stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, in general, sure. If there's shortcomings, you want to hear about it. If there's
Oh, of
difficulties in
course.
administering it from the shop level, from the tech, or they're having access issues, of course you want to know about it.
Yeah.
But we don't want to be airing every administrative hurdle that would have to be cleared to get approved because somebody's going to keep trying. I think some time ago now, you received if I remember seriously, like applications for in the thousands from people who are like just trying to figure out how do we get approved. And of
Yeah.
course they weren't shot, right?
No.
They were criminals who are looking to get access.
And mostly not even in North America.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's the other side of it. Why are you looking for VSP? Your VSP certification and qualifications when you're in, Singapore or something.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
To help my friends in North America steal cars.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
there we go.
Or to
Yeah.
make them run after we get them here.
Or yeah, well, there's that too, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. Yeah.
that too. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, the thieves are always going to be you try to be one step ahead. Um, but for shops, I mean, there's still and technicians, there's still a fairly limited number of tools that are available. And LaunchTech was first out of the gate to adopt SDRM VSP models and access. There's recently you'd mentioned in recent information that Xtool has recently completed its implementation. TopDon has got a limited release, and Autel, is going to be phasing in through some of its tools starting a little later this year. Um, what's the outlook though? I mean, this is just starting now. It's just starting to gain traction, it sounds, even though it's been out for a little bit.
Yeah. So the outlook currently is we wanted to get the tools that are most familiar to the bad guys. And for better or for worse, which usually means you build a good tool. Autel and Xtool, well, the Auto Pro Pad specifically are the weapons of choice
Right.
that the police bring to us all the time and say, how can I get the information off this so that I can make my case? And so we work closely with law enforcement. As you know, Rusty Russell, that's on our team, came from law enforcement, as did John, our registry manager. They both came from law enforcement background. One in counterfeit and intellectual property issues. The other one from straight up car theft.
Right.
And so, Rusty works well with law enforcement and sits on boards internationally with them. So we're able to work with law enforcement on what their issues are, and we show the aftermarket scan tool companies what those are, as well as automakers, and that helps a lot to make the program as relevant as possible. So, I think what we're going to see this is a game that we're playing where first we're trying to get cooperation. Then we're going to have that level of those folks are going to have their tools validating. And then what we're already seeing is there's people in the professional realm trying to figure out how they cannot update their software so that they don't have to punch in an ID they already flippin' have. I'm like, why?
Yeah,
It's
I've seen
faster to
that.
punch
I've
in
seen
our
that too.
digits. It's crazy. So, all that does is further facilitate theft with a tool, which will further facilitate government saying, well, we're just going to have to outlaw the tool. You're going to have to use the OE tool. this is exactly what we don't want to have happen. And we want people to use the tool that works best for them. And if you're running a locksmith shop, you need, and frankly, if you're doing security in an auto repair shop where you almost never do it, you want a broad brand tool. And it needs to do the functions that you're most likely to do, which for our guys that service cars is mostly not have anything to do with installing keys. It's resetting an immobilizer after I do a repair.
Right.
And if those tools get basically outlawed as a result of that, and we've seen that. I mean, Rusty's sat down with multiple states and said, "Yeah, so this is not the way to solve it. The way to solve it is to make sure that the good guys are validating because these tools in their hands are invaluable to vehicle owners."
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line, right? It's really important for shops and the technicians to step up and start using it. You know, and frankly, the tool makers too. You know, I mentioned a few brands, but there's the wise folks out there will recognize that there's some major brands that aren't on that list.
Yes.
And
Well,
but
there are
great to
many
see
that don't have security,
that just don't have the security.
but there are some that want to and will now that there's a process in place.
Right, right, yeah.
And
So
then there'll be the second tier that will be the ones who are start receiving all of the subpoenas that the other companies were receiving when their
right,
tools were and then they're going to go, you know what, this is not this is I can't do this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it seems very clearly the way to go, even if it means that you have to actually do a little bit more login information and get yourself updated. And of course, get yourself certified if you're a tech and you're going to be doing some of this work. If you're a shop and you don't see enough of it, you know, hopefully you're connected with somebody who's in the VSP program out there to make sure that all the stuff that you're doing is above board and that you're protected. You know, I can, you haven't mentioned this, but I can very clearly see that, you know, if there's a process in place and as a shop, you're not taking advantage or employing that process and something happens to vehicles you've been working on, you could very well get wrapped up into some kind of court case in all this too, right? It's like, hey, look, this is something that
Yep.
your duty of care, like this was something that's out there, cost you nothing. And if you haven't sort of making the leap, you don't want to leave yourself open to that. That's for sure. So, um, it's certainly a growing concern from a business standpoint, from a technical standpoint, and for a you know, an access to broad-based aftermarket tools. I mean, if we want to be able to continue to have access to those and make sure that only the people who are supposed to have them and use them can do that, right?
Exactly.
Good stuff. All
Yeah.
right, Donnie, we're out of time.
Yeah.
We're
I
going to have you
understand.
back again for sure. Um,
Okay.
Great stuff. You know, talk to your tool manufacturers, see what they've got available, and if you feel the need and you feel you're feeling you want to push them to get more involved and get you know, their tools uh, you know, into this program, you know, do so. Grassroots support means a lot.
Indeed.
And thanks for everyone for listening. And you know, make sure you're protected. Do all you can to make sure that you got all the right stuff in place. Thanks again, Donnie. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Andrew.
You're listening to the Great Canadian Aftermarket Podcast, brought to you by the publishers of Indie Garage and Jobber Nation. Connect with us online at indiegarage.ca and jobbernation.ca, a brand of Chat Integrated Media.